Summer has always been a season of wonder and discovery for children, and for many at-risk kids in Oregon and Southwest Washington, it's the perfect opportunity to experience a camp of a lifetime. Since 1970, thousands of underprivileged children between the ages of 9 and 11 have attended Camp Rosenbaum along Oregon's beautiful coast, just south of Astoria. The camp, founded by General Fred Rosenbaum, is a collaborative partnership between the housing authorities of Oregon and Southwest Washington, the Oregon National Guard, and the Portland Police Bureau. Other first responders from the local area participate as well. Positive messages and life lessons are woven throughout the camp. Kids ride horses, go to the beach, sing and dance, and experience things they've never done before. In addition to the fun and adventure, the kids also learn citizenship skills and the importance of staying in school and away from gangs and drugs. This one-of-a-kind camp changes lives, not just for the children who attend, but for everyone who volunteers as well.
Well, let me say this to you. I had a condominium down at Gerhardt, Oregon, and we were down there, that was many years ago, and I took my two kids, who at that time were, 10 and 12, down to Camp Rylea, and I wanted to show them Camp Rylea. So we drove down, and the camp was empty, not a soul around. We went on the parade ground grass there and flew some kites and played ball, and nobody around. At that time, I was chairman of the Housing Authority of Portland as well. Took care of thousands of families, very, very low income families for housing. The thought occurred to me, you know, this thing is empty. Why don't I start a children's camp and bring the kids down and have the Guard sponsor it, and I'll raise some money and we'll bring the kids down for a week and enjoy this place. Went to see the Adjutant General at that time down in Salem. And he said, "Rosenbaum, this is fraud, waste, and abuse. You're crazy, you know, get the hell out of here." Okay, so I jumped in a car, drove down 3-4 more blocks in Salem, went to see Governor Tom McCall. Tom, an old friend of ours, and I worked on his campaign. I told him my idea about the camp, just in very, very sketchy terms. He says, "Fred, I think it's a good idea. Do you want me to do it?" "Yeah, I want you to do it." I said, "Well, pick up the phone and call headquarters for the National Guard, tell them you want to do this, and we'll go from there." So I drove back to Portland. There was a call there, a call back from the Adjutant General's office. "Rosenbaum, you don't explain things properly. Come down here, tell me what you want to do." So I told him about the kids camp, and he gave me the barest support for the camp. I think 6 or 8 people. It was a cook, a baker, a doctor, a first sergeant, a couple drivers, and that was it. And then I arranged for the counselors of the camp, students from Central Catholic High School. And we started with boys, I think it was from 14 to 16. And the first year, you know, none of us ever had done a camp before. It was all right. And the second year, it kind of tightened up, and there was some trouble. There were some people who had affiliations with gangs and all that. And the third year, I realized I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. We had a white camper hit a black camper over the head with a 2x4, and everything divided racially, and it was just a mess there for a few hours. And I said, "To hell with it, we're all done." So we hung it up, and we didn't do any more up until General Miller was appointed the Adjutant General, which was about 2-3 years later. General Miller, a wonderful, wonderful man. I was at his swearing-in ceremony. He said, "Fred, I want you to start the camp again." And I said, "I can't. You won't give me the proper staff to run this thing." He says, "Write a operations plan. Let me see it, and let's see how we can staff it." So I got a committee together, and we worked for about a month or 2 on how to run this camp. And the first guideline was 1 counselor for every 3 kids. We brought the age down a little bit because we didn't want to get kids that are already involved in stuff brought the age down, put together a whole curriculum on anti-gang, anti-drugs, and presented to General Miller. We've been running the camp that way ever since. A big concentration in the camp today are no gangs, no drugs. Think about your life, where you're going to go. Stay in school. Finish high school. It's not if I finish high school, but when I finish high school, and then on to college. And that is the path of the camp today, and it's working.
I first got started with Camp Rosenbaum back in 1984. I was a brand new second lieutenant and was approached at that time by the Assistant Adjutant General for Air, Brigadier General Fred Rosenbaum, and he was looking for counselors and invited me to come down there. And when you're a second lieutenant and a brigadier general comes up and invites you to come down there, I thought that was a great idea. Well, all of my time with, with Camp Rosenbaum, when I was, both as a counselor and the lead counselor and then the camp director, I was also working with the Portland Police Bureau. And worked my way up and got to be an assistant chief of police, which made it a little easier to influence policy there. And then we started bringing police officers down to Camp Rosenbaum in, I was going to guess it was probably about 20 years ago, so about 1990. But first that was with the Police Activities League, when we first got that started. And then from Police Activities League, we expanded that to the Gang Resistance Education and Training Program. So great. So both the PAL and GRADE programs were introduced down there, and then we started bringing officers down as counselors. And that's really taken off too. So I feel really good about being able to bring the Portland Police on as a full partner, but then bringing the other public safety agencies on board as well.
In 1984, now General Prunk put out an informational kind of call to all the police officers here at the Police Bureau to come be counselors at Camp Rosenbaum. And I think about 8 or 9 of us responded and went that first year. And since that time, I've fallen in love with camp and come back as many as I could of those years.
The Housing Authority of Portland recruits and offers all employees at the Housing Authority to sign up for camp. And a lot of coworkers of mine had gone to camp before and had talked about it. So pretty much the first year I started working for the Housing Authority, I signed up to go to camp.
Well, I'd been involved as a police officer with the PAL program, Police Activities League, and I'd done PAL camps for years. And a lot of the police officers kept saying, you've got to come down to this camp. We need to introduce you to Rosenbaum. And I went down, which as we all know is VIG Day. The great thing about that was I took my music equipment there, we set it up, and back then they were using an old outdoor PA system, and it was terrible. I ended up staying a day and then went the next day as well for the final day on Friday. And I think what got me most was seeing the impact of the kids as the police officers came in and the military folks were in their uniforms, knowing that these kids hadn't seen these folks in that capacity all camp long. And at that point, as I like to tell people, this camp's contagious, and I was hooked.
I'd never really been around many guards people or police officers, and so that was a little bit different for me too, to get used to that. But after almost the first 24 hours, you're like a family, and so it was just so much fun. And the first year I was a counselor, so which is one of the best jobs there, because you really get to experience all the activities that the kids go through that week at camp.
I had no idea what to expect. I'm not sure anyone could be prepared for living with 10 kids that come from all kinds of different situations. I had great co-counselors that helped me understand the right boundaries with the kids, and I guess I had just as much fun as they did doing all the events and having all the great surprises that they have for the kids during camp.
The great thing about my position is I'm in the clubhouse alone, maybe myself and a few staff members. When these kids come off the bus, they come out to a wave of people. It's a file of lines, and they come into a room full of music, and energy, and they don't know how to receive that. These kids are very reserved. They're kind of shut off. Some of them are kind of fronting a little bit, like they're a little upset to be there. By the end of the week, you start to pick out these kids that need that little encouragement, and pretty soon you realize that you can see the impact you're having on these children. Our counselors, our staff members, they take these kids from being very reserved, quiet, and very shut out to these kids are the ones that are out there hugging folks on the final day saying, thank you, I'm going to miss you. These kids are in tears, and some of our hardest kids that walk through those doors end up leaving as the softest. And I compliment the camp on that, and it's not a knock on the kids. They're still going back to an area they need to be reserved, but the bottom line is they know that people love them, they know that people respect them, and they know that that's there for them. So camp changes these kids' lives, and it changes the adults in the process.
Well, I relate to these kids because I came from a similar background. I had a very chaotic, unorganized background that was filled with abuse and alcoholism. And I wasn't sure how I would relate with them, but it turns out I relate with them really well. What they say doesn't alarm me or scare me, and I think that they sense that in me, so we can talk at just about any level and have great conversations. And because I had to parent myself and make some life changes to where I learned to be disciplined and I learned to be organized, when I bring those skills to camp and we talk to the kids about here's some things you have to do, they accept it, and I think that they find comfort in that regular routine. And we know that that's true by day 4. They're with the program, they've eaten as much as they want to eat, they sleep when they're supposed to sleep, and it gives them, I think, the skills that, and whether they remember or not, that they can take with them to then parent themselves if they need to, if they don't have that parent at home.
The kids that we recruit are children that live in housing authority complexes that either HAP owns or Section 8, which is private owned, but they have a voucher. And the kids are what we consider 30% or less of median income. So they're from the poorest families, the poorest of the poor in the Portland area.
You know, the neat thing about camp is we have a captured audience. They're ours. They're the captive audience, there to learn. And camp teaches life lessons. The great thing that we have going, so to speak, is great. Gang resistance education and training. You know, when you hear Fred, as he would give his talks to kids, he always told them that they're loved. He always told them to make good choices, stay off drugs, and stay out of gangs, and stay in school. His message was clear, and the bottom line is these kids are subjected to a lot of peer pressure. While they're at camp, they're constantly receiving messages from the counselors, from the staffers, to make good choices, to think about decisions you make today affect your future tomorrow, and these kids get that. And the GREAT program has been integrated with Camp Rosenbaum to create an opportunity for kids to actually get that education and reinforcement of what they might have learned in school already, and then it reinforces that through camp.
One thing we know from long-term studies is that if you can reach kids at around the 3rd grade level and impact their behavior and their expectations, that is the best time to impact their lives for decades to come. And so the timing of Camp Rosenbaum is ideal in terms of entering kids' lives. And then tie that to a follow-up experience with caring adults for 1 or 2 years thereafter. You really have the opportunity to profoundly change their lives.
Counseling and mentorship is so crucial because you get to make that one-on-one connection with kids, and studies have shown that even 1 year of mentorship in a child's life can completely change the course of where that life may go. Just 1 year.
The point to be made is that 3rd grade is a pivotal achievement point in kids' lives. And in fact, there are states that project their prison population based on 3rd grade reading scores.
We have the opportunity of working with kids traditionally, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade age level. The great part about it is that a lot of the police officers who are part of camp work in these kids' communities, and so these kids have the opportunity to actually see the guys and the women who they've connected with at camp in their own communities, which is really a fabulous thing.
You are a mentor, but you're a mentor on that shorter scale for that one intense week, which I think still has such an impact for these kids. You get to spend time in the middle of the night, singing to them if they're uncomfortable, they're scared. And for that week at camp, you're it. You're that figure that's going to give them comfort. And again, that touches your very soul. And so you make a connection there. And when counselors are successful, those kids remember that they take that with them, and there's a connection there that they will not forget.
The experience has been that you'll go to camp and some of these kids will come to camp and you've had that impact with them for that week, trying to teach them to be good citizens, letting them know they have choices they can make and they can really change their life.
Well, the reason that the staff loves volunteering at the camp and why it is the best camp ever is because they know during this week that they can make an impact on these children. That these people go in there having the background that they have, whether it's being with the police, whether it's being with the housing authority, whether it's being just a general volunteer like myself, or a firefighter, or with the Guard, that they know that they can make an impact on these kids' lives based upon maybe their own life lessons that they've learned and their ability to give back to the community. And so the kids feel that. They feel the love, they feel the warmth, and then at the end of the week are so blown away when they find out that, oh my gosh, this guy who I bonded with is a cop, and I know if I get into trouble or if a friend of mine gets into trouble, I've got somebody I can call.
What hit me the hardest is a story that, and this occurred probably 11 years ago, and some would think it's myth, but it actually happened. It was a kid who, on the day they received their shoes from Nike, this kid took his shoes out to the hard deck, which is the roadway. And as he's out there scuffing his shoes up, the counselor thinks he's being disrespectful. The counselor, goes out to admonish his child for his behavior, and the camper looks at him and says, if they look brand new, my mom will sell them for drug money. Now that did happen. That is a true story. And that's a reminder of the world these kids come from. And it's a sad reminder of the world that the kids return to. But I would tell you that this camp doesn't only change the lives of a child, it changes the lives of the adults that are working with them.
I think really the public message of this is changing kids' lives and seeing those kids change and learn some of the values, maybe things that they're not getting at home or things that they're not getting from their school, and really seeing that there's these core values that we kind of try to express at camp and have the kids learn about, of citizenship. Good citizens work together, good citizens share, good citizens care. And there's all these different values that maybe they don't really learn on a daily basis, and this really kind of drills it home for them because it's a whole week of that time where you've kind of taken them out of that element of their home life that might be difficult, or their school life where they might be having trouble, and really giving them a week of just having fun and then learning those messages in a fun environment. And they can bring that home, when they get back from camp, from the week of camp.
Not all kids that come to camp come from a bad background. Their parents just don't make a lot of money. Where the big impact is when you go out to these sites and you're just going, maybe I'm now in my capacity, I'm going to one of the properties to talk with the property manager about compliance for the program. And I will hear a kid across the playground yelling, "Hey Freckles, is that you?" And they come running up and they see us in a whole different light. They don't see us as just the lease enforcers. They don't see us as the ones evicting mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, aunt, and uncle. They see us as actually somebody they've become, known. They love you. I mean, in that short week, it's amazing the impact you can have on kids.
I will say that every year you just never know. Every camp is unique, and every camp you're touched by, an experience. Whether that's you see something happen with a camper, or you see a counselor grow into a position, or you just hear the really feel-good stories on there. So
there's a connection, and it's ongoing. And I've heard of some kids that have, since they've been to camp, they've made other choices. One girl that I remember in particular got off the bus, big chip on her shoulder, came from Salem, was really a handful for the first half of the week. And we had VIG Day, and we happened to have Governor Roberts was following our group around that day. And Governor Roberts was talking to this little girl, and the little girl was telling her what the struggles were at home and whatnot. And Governor Roberts looked at her and said, "But honey, you can be anything you want to be." And later that week, this little girl who had been just kind of a little bit of a pain, she come up to me and said, "Freckles, I really can be anything I want to be, can't I?" And I said, "Honey, the sky's the limit." I ran into her a few years later, and she had become a scholar at North Salem High. She was working at Boys and Girls Club. She was a mentor for the smaller kids. And she herself told me it was because of that week at camp that it showed her she could be something better than, more than maybe what she was intended to be or headed to be.
And in fact, I get a lot of phone calls from parents after the week of camp calling to just thank us for sending their child to camp and wanting to know if they could send their child to camp again, which unfortunately we try not to do. But and they just say how much their child just blossomed in that week. From maybe being kind of an introvert or a child that has never really experienced other things like that, to coming home and just being so full of excitement and telling stories and having new friends that they've met during the week of camp.
So it's those, even if you reach 1 out of 100 kids, that's what camp can do in just a week. And that's why I keep going, because if we can reach one child, no matter where they live, Portland or whatever, and show them there's a different way, show them there's other types of work they can do, show that we can work with the Portland Police, their National Guard folks can work with the Housing Authority and whatnot. It really does show them that there's choices they can make and can live a different life.
Bottom line is you can have a huge impact on these kids. There's plenty of us that are willing to donate our time to the cause, but we need you to keep this dream alive. Thanks for being here.
One last question.
Yes, sir.
Just talk a little bit about the staff at the camp.
Well, let me tell you, if I could write a love story, I would write it right away. I don't know what's happening to the staff at the camp, but the finest people in the National Guard show up at that camp. Dozens of men and women with leadership capabilities such as you've never seen before. Nobody's there just to throw a baseball. They are there to make a contribution, and I can't tell you how wonderful that is. Every one of these people brings something to the camp.